Good Torah. As you see, it's Motzei Shabbos, Parshat Mishpatim, and it's the second day of Adar, Tav Shin Pei Aleph. Mitzvah Shem have simchas. Now, I'm going to do the shir. It's going to be a little longer, but hang on. It's very, very powerful to me. There's a thing that we say every Motzei Shabbos, or supposed to say. It's a segula. I'm starting with the segula today. The segula gedola la'atzlacha for nashim betaf. Everybody's supposed to say this. It's from the Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, to say it 3 times before Havdalah, and they'll be matzliach with banai chayim mezayni bevadei. Says bevadei. So he says, it says there. It's in Yiddish, so it's a little hard for some people to understand, but you get used to it. Okay, you can learn some Yiddish also. And it's even some Sidurim, they wouldn't have it in Ivrit. It says, in the end of it, it says, Unso bracha v'hatzlacha, unso chesed cha'isha v'chavod, unso bonai chaye ravichi nemezani ravichi, v'siyata l'shmai alona l'chol Yisrael amen. So that's where I'm starting, because this is the Zera Shimshon on this week's Parsha. It's going to speak about exactly this problem, this subject. The pasuk starts in Shmois, Oveiraches lachmecho ve'es meimecho. Loi siyeh mishakela ve'akara ve'artzecho, es mispar yamecha amale. So it says a number of things there. I will bless your bread, your water, and you won't have anybody that's barren in your land, and fulfill the number of your days. Make arichas yamim, in other words, long life. So it's 3 times. Shalosh havtachas alola. These 3 promises. Hein ma'ide omar Rava b'shili ma'id katan. That's the end of ma'id katan. What Rava says. Banei chayim ve'zayni lei b'schus atal yamisa. The children and life, right, health, and mezainis are not dependent on mazel. It's dependent, and it's not on your schus. It's dependent on the mazel. What does that mean? Okay, at the end of the Gemara in Shabbos, the Taisus writes, there it talks about whether it's a machlekes, whether we are under the signs of the astrology or not, Jewish people. Are Jewish people totally dependent on the mazalos or not? So it's mashma that we're not, right? So it's because the Taisus writes there, even if we're depending on to a certain degree on the mazals, but with a big merit we can change the mazel. Oh, so the kasha, the mikan nira b'schusadav ketal. Here it's mashman the Gemara and Ma'id Katan that it's depending on the merits, not on the mazel. Like it says in Kodesh Baruch Hu, l'kayim lahem elu haftaches. God is dependent on our zechusim to be efficiently activate these promises. Even though it doesn't say when you serve God, right? It's not mashma that you have to have a big schus. You have to have a regular schus. everybody's avodas Hashem confers that on us. Even without a great merit, it depends on your mazel. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu mafticham she'af b'loi zechus gadol. So Hashem promises that even without great merits, even without changing the mazel, they will get these benefits. Even if somebody is decreed in heaven that he will have very sufficient, just minimal mezainas, minimal food and sustenance, so God blesses that food that he's taking in. I'm sorry, these papers are upside down. So the bread that he's eating, or whatever, that bread includes all kinds of food sustenance. So that food that he's eating will be blessed in his insides, in his intestines. That way, the mazel doesn't turn it over. And the poor person can have a pleasure from that, just like the rich person. He will eat and be satisfied and have extra. So that's what it means. If you worship God properly, it's sufficient, and God will bless the bread and your water. The Chesiv says, it means your bread, which is very sufficient and very minimalized, and the water and bread. That's not eating. That's not eating at prime 10, guys. Okay. Shema Amina. So that bread that you're eating is according to your mazel. You don't need a big merit to change the mazel. So this little bit that you're getting with God's blessing will be like you're eating a lot. It says, the days of your life I will fulfill. You don't need to change the mazel in order to increase those days. It won't diminish from them. In Perik Revim, it says, Zacha, if he's privileged, if he's privileged, it will increase the days of his life. If he's not privileged, they'll diminish. What does it mean, Zacha? What does it mean he's privileged? Zechus Gadol. It means a big merit. Like the Marsha says, like according to the Taisvis in the Shabbos. Here the pasuk is promising. Even though they don't have a big merit, you don't be diminished, they will be fulfilled. If you say, what do we need this? What do we need this promise for? The only way you're diminishing those days is if you're not privileged. Being privileged means you're doing Hashem's will. How could it enter your mind that they will diminish the days of somebody who is privileged, even though he doesn't have a big schus? According to Rabbi Akiva, he says the Kamar Zacha Mashlimim, that if he's privileged, then he'll fulfill. But if his son was like Rabbi Akiva, he's not privileged, he won't fulfill his days. What does it mean that he's privileged? Even if he's a Beinoni, it won't diminish from those days. So they only diminish those days to me that is not somebody that's not privileged. The Yesh Leimer. Sometimes a person, unfortunately, eats the wrong foods at the wrong time and too much of it. Okay, so it does. He's attracted or addicted to his habits. But Michael or Mishta, either with food or drink, or some other reason. Okay. So he's going past in a dangerous place where he doesn't even know there's a danger. It could happen something that he might be endangered even by mistake. Therefore, the pasuk promises so the Torah says if you're doing God's will, He'll protect you from these bad events and to fulfill your days. But somebody who's not privileged, not only that he won't be saved, but they will diminish his days. even though he's very careful not to go into places he shouldn't go and to eat what he shouldn't eat. However, but banim, this is the third thing, right? Because it says, Lo yisiyeh mishakela. You will not, the pasuk says in this week's parsha, you will not be barren. Here we see that it can change the mazel of a person. Why in this case, by children, it changes the mazel. Okay? The first parak of Rosh Hashanah says, Shleisha dvorim mikarim gezar dina shaladam. 3 things rip the gezar din of a person. So even, I wanted to go get the Gemara Rosh Hashanah to show you inside what it says, because it doesn't bring it in Zera Shimshon. So Omer Rabbi Yitzchak Arba Dvorim Nikarim was a Gezar Dina Shaladam. There seems to be a machlekes in the exact year. So here it says 4 things rip the din of a person. So what are they? Gezar Dina Elohim Tzedakah, right? And this is the month of giving tzedakah. We had Parshat Shkolim today. Tzaka, crying out, which what the Jews did it in by Haman. Shinui Hashem, it's changing your name. Shinui Maisa, and changing your deeds. Okay, that's that. And he brings rayas. And then the Yesh Oimrim Af Shinui Makom. Okay, so that's the 4 things. Now that's what he's bringing here. The question is, Kidi Ashkecham Ba'Avram, and we find by Avram, and he brings rayas for all these things. The Idach, and the other one says, Hahu Zechusa de Eretz Yisrael Huli Asya Anyele. Some say Nashinui Makam is really not part of them, but the merit of living in Eretz Yisrael, Baruch Hashem, I'm zachet to that now, that helped. The Amar Akasav, Lo yisiyeh meshakela ve'akara be'artzecha davke, that you will not have barren in your land, davka. V'hainu mishum zechus Eretz Yisrael. That's in the merit of Eretz Yisrael. Elo da'adayin kasher. Im zechus yeshivas Eretz Yisrael nikra zechus gadol. Shanais hamazel shel abanim. If living in Eretz Yisrael is such a big merit that it changes the mazel of people that have banim, so it should be also a great merit to change your health and your livelihood and also your mezainis, which is parnasa, making a living. And if it's not a big merit for those other 2 things, the livelihood and health, then why? Why is different from children? The ledavar zeh mishtanam hamaz. There, it changes the mazel. So what's the Gemara saying? Always God gives attribute per attribute. So when one attribute compensates the other attribute. In the 13th parak of Ksuvais, Daf Kuf Yud Amud Beis, Amrina, we say, Kol Hadar be'Eretz Yisrael. Anybody who lives in Eretz Yisrael, Daima Kimishi Yesh Le'alaka. It's as if he has a God. Okay? And if he lives in Chutz La'aretz, it's as if he doesn't have a God. That's the Gemara says, I didn't say it. But Kol Hadar be'Chutz La'aretz, Daima Kimishi Ein Le'alaka. It's similar to like he doesn't have God. Because the real reason behind that is because the Shivim Sare Uma Sa'olam. And every country has its own Sar, and that Sar is in charge. Okay, God puts him in charge. So it's not like God, in Eretz Yisrael, God's in charge. Period. There's no other Sar. So he said, I'm giving you the land of Canaan to be a God. Okay? We say, so anybody who is not engaged in being fruitful and multiplying, he's like he doesn't have a God. He's removing the Shechina from Klal Yisrael. It's a pasuk in Breshis, to be for you a God and to your children and your seed afterwards. When you have children after you, it's like the Shechina is dwelling. If you don't have children after you, Shechina mi shayra, al mi shayra. So where's the Shechina going to be dwelling? Ala eitzim ala avanim, and the stones on the grass. What? The stones and the trees. Who needs the Shechina there, right? That's the end of the Gemara there. Okay, mi'ata zeh dar shadar be'eretz Yisrael hu dar sham kedei sheyelei hashras hashchina. The person that's living in Eretz Yisrael is there he's dwelling there in order that he should bring the Shechina. Be'ez Hashem karev. Asher Shechina ba al yidei habanim. The Shechina comes through children. In Cain al karchacha tzarich leishanis mazoli. Therefore, it's going to change your mazel. The le'inyan habanim mikre shivas Eretz Yisrael zechus gadol. To having children in Eretz Yisrael, it's called a very great privilege. Aval l'shar mili, like. But other things, not definite. And not your health, your wealth, not definitely. Mishum hachi acher hakasav loisiya mashakela. Therefore, after the pasuk says in this week's parsha, loisiya mashakela, therefore you won't have barren women. The haino sheyishtane hamazol. So that's what it says right afterwards. Kasav es mispar yamecha amale b'li shinui mazol. Your days I will fulfill without changing the mazel. So therefore, it's just like I change your mazel by having children, so I will change your mazel with life. No. So the order is very necessary. First of all, you need to have livelihood. Otherwise, you can't have a family. And afterwards children, and afterwards long life, so you can enjoy those children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. That's the way it goes in order. Then he blesses your food, and you won't be barren. And the third thing is, I fulfill your life, the days of your life. Like with mezainis, it says, I will remove a machla. Machla is a sickness from your midst. Because that's dependent on the food you eat. Like it says in Chazal and Bava Kama, in Daf Tzadik Beis, machla is the mora. Mora is the gallbladder. The bile comes from the gallbladder. So the Gemara says, Shepei Gimel Chaloyim Taluyim Bo. There's 83 sicknesses that depend on that. They come from that organ. So, and v'chulim pashachris mevatlim. And if you eat pashachris with a stick of a kitoin ma'ayin, that's what the Gemara says, you eat pashachris and bread in the morning with a little water, it's mevatel all the sicknesses. The perik arba revi the ksuvas, it says amrinim the refuah hi kimezainis. The refuah is like having food. And it depends on the mazel. B'shili Shabbos kasu ataysus. I thought I had lost a page, but I didn't. But I want to end this with saying that the mezainis is what's fine in the Gemara, like this says. The mora is called the machla. Mama nikushma machla. Why is it called machla? There's 83 diseases associated with the gallbladder. And eating pas shachris, b'melach, in the morning, and a kito in mayim, and a cup of wine, a cup of wine, right? In the morning, don't drink the wine in the morning. A cup of water in the morning will bevato all of those sicknesses. Now, how do we get that? If he eats bread and water and drinks what's fitting, he'll be saved from those sicknesses. And by the way, machla is the gematria of 83. Surprise! So he says, you eat properly, And that's not, well, you have to investigate what eating properly means. I think they're simplifying it in the Gemara, but it means to eat the proper way, not too much, not too little. For sure, you will fulfill the pasuk that I will remove every sickness from your midst. Okay, have a wonderful week.